I want to share with you, we tend to do a lot of girls' discussion nights, and it was one discussion night, and a girl looked at me with absolute sincerity and absolute honesty. And she said to me, Manya, what's your relationship like with the Torah? Do you feel inadequate? And I was like, whoa, okay. So first of all, something you have to know, Texans are usually much more guarded, right? And they're much more cautious about asking things that may make someone feel uncomfortable. And this girl was like, I said, what do you mean? She said, like you've never had an Aliyah Torah, you never read from the Torah. You're not coming up and your bat mitzvah. I mean, you didn't, called up and read the whole thing and lead the service. Like, don't you feel like you're missing something? Don't you feel like you're missing a connection? Now, first of all, before I could calm everyone else down, because everyone was like shocked and horrified that she was actually being honest and real, which hopefully you've learned from me that I love honesty and real, right? So I had to tell everyone, no, that is an amazing, amazing question. She's asking what a lot of people are wondering, what a lot of people are thinking, and she's asking with honesty. And so I actually love that question because it was coming from a real, sincere place. She had one relationship with Torah all her life, one perspective and one perception of what my relationship with Torah was, maybe as an Orthodox woman or as a Rebbitzin. I don't know what other titles, or a Hasidic woman. I think she had one image of what that should be or shouldn't be. And she was really curious how to reconcile what she saw in front of her, someone who doesn't look depressed, someone who generally loves, running a Chabad house, invigorating young, connecting young Jews with their Judaism, running a space that's invigorating and uplifting for everyone. And yet there was something really gnawing away at her core that didn't add up. So we'll get to the answer in a while, but I want to share with you a most fascinating story that we know, historic, piece of, take us back in history. And it's around the Second Temple era, and it's the destruction of the temple. And we all know it was a really long and gruesome, painful experience. The Jews clearly were not united in how to handle the Roman conquest. As you can well imagine, there were many opinions on how to navigate the impending disaster and the siege of the city, to the degree that there were zealots who actually burned food, storehouses of food, in order to make the Jews so desperate that they would fight back. And finally, the leader of the Jewish people knows he needs to do something really, really, this is bad. And so through a very interesting, fascinating series of events, he escapes the city, the sieged city of Jerusalem. And sure enough, as he gets out to the other end, he meets up with Vespasian. Now, Vespasian was the general who was leading the Roman, charge at the, outside the gates of Jerusalem, part of the siege. And he gets off and he says, Your Highness, or Your Royal Emperor, I come with requests. And Vespasian says, I need to kill you. Kill me? What do you mean? He says, well, no, if I'm the emperor, if I'm the leader, why haven't you come to me until now? But guess what? I'm not the emperor. And there's an emperor in Rome that you are literally saying is not. You're literally rebelling against the king. You deserve death. And suddenly a messenger comes from Rome and tells Vespasian, guess what? The emperor is dead. You have been appointed the new leader, the new king. And suddenly Vespasian realizes he is not talking to any ordinary man. This is not just some old rabbi who came to implore, beg, beseech. So he says to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, what is it that I can give you? What's your wish? Now, I always discuss this with students and I say, okay, what do you think the wish? And they say, save the women and children, give us food, we need water. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai makes a request that right when you say it, it's like, wait, what is this? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, give us a city of Yavna, city set up aside in the port city, and give us a bunch of sages. We want to take the righteous sages. We want a city where they're untouched, unfazed, unharmed by the Roman conquest. They can live in peace and learn and teach Torah. Now, Vespasian, what? That's what you want? Not the royal temple, not the holy temple, not the temple mount, not food, not... At that one moment, Vespasian grants the wish for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, And at that moment, he may have won the battle, but he lost the war. Because still in 2020, we're gathering together to learn Torah. Every year we're gathering in synagogues to dance with our Torah. Every year we're gathering to celebrate Shavuot and our connection, our bond when we receive the Torah all over again. And Vespasian's in a history book. The Arch of Triumph, right? Titus's Arch of Triumph is in ruins, where we go visit historic sites. And what's so interesting is historians noted that on that Arch of Triumph of the Roman Empire taking over Jerusalem, it shows captives leading through the city with so many precious items, golden things from this temple, from that temple, all these different things, and yet no Torah scrolls. So there's something. They may have gotten our gold or our silver or our temple or our mountain, but we're still here, and we're still alive, and we're still connected, and we're still gathered on a Monday night in 2020 learning Torah. So what is it about this Torah that this sage, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, said, that's the request. That's what we're going to keep us going. That's the secret ingredient to keep us alive and connected. So tonight we're going to explore this very unique mitzvah of learning Torah. I think for me, the most challenging part of these classes is narrowing down. There's so much to cover. It's such amazing subjects. Like each one we could have a whole series on. So we're going to try to, pick through some of the layers and then, of course, make it practical, because we want it to be practical and we want to be able to take it home. So I'll start with a little bit of an understanding that since it's Mitzvah Mondays and we're discussing mitzvot, it's actually a separate mitzvah to learn Torah. It's one of the mitzvot. You're supposed to be involved day and night in Torah learning. Okay, that's a big request. I don't know. I think the fact that you guys are carving out an hour and a half on a Monday night, that's like wild to me, right? There's so many other things. There's for sure drawers that need to be organizing, or children that need attention, or I don't know. The to-do list is not short. We all know, right? So the fact that we're all carving out the time is amazing. So how do I do day and night? And how does that reconcile with my life as a mom, woman, mother, entrepreneur, businesswoman? I don't know. There's so many responsibilities. Like, does Torah really expect that of me? So we'll put that on the side, and hopefully by the end, we'll have a conclusion to that. But what's fascinating, what's really fascinating is actually in the morning brachot, there's two blessings that actually discuss Torah, our relationship with Torah. One is we're saying, thank you, God, you chose us to your nation, you gave us the Torah, right? And the other one is called Berchat Torah, where we literally say, but then we're supposed to say in the beginning of the day, because since learning Torah is a mitzvah, and please God, every day we should at least be learning Torah once during the day. So we say the bracha in the morning that covers our Torah learning for the day. So we actually wake up with part of our morning routine when we thank God for the fact that we're awake, and we thank God for the fact that we have a body and a soul, and we thank God that he provides all our needs. We thank God that he gave us the Torah. And we thank God that we have a Torah every single day that we can learn from and grow from. And that's our, again, secret ingredient, our inheritance. As a matter of fact, fascinatingly enough, if you recall, we discussed earlier, there were 12 Torah passages that the Lubavitcher Rebbe really wanted to be integral, fundamental building blocks of Jewish home and Jewish life, that even a young child can rattle them off. If I called in my kids, I'm not, because they're doing their homework peacefully, so I'm not going to, but if I called them in and I asked them to say the 12 Torah passages, they would be able to rattle them off, but it starts off with the first one. Torah tziva lanu Moshe Morasha Kihilat Yaakov. The Torah is our inheritance. Yours and I, every single one of us. We inherited a lot of different things, but Torah is yours. It's not like it belongs to the rabbi in the synagogue. It's not like it belongs to a scholar somewhere else. It's yours, your own personal inheritance, your own gift from Moses, from Sinai, through all the generations, through all the hardships, through all the ups and downs. Yes, all the way to 2020. It's yours, personal, your own relationship with Torah. So what is it about Torah? What is it about this incredible gift that we have? And how do we tap into it? How do I make this a part of my life, and it could be very overwhelming. I open it up, it's in Hebrew, there's languages, Aramaic, the Talmud. Where do I start? Where do I begin? Where do I end? Overwhelming. So, well, first of all, everyone did the right thing. They started by showing up at a Beis Chana class, signing up, you got the emails, you're here. So first of all, it's like a giant pat on the back because, first thing we got to do is show up, right? So we're there. So that's step one, obviously. But yet we know, since Torah is so fundamental and it's a separate mitzvah to learn Torah, it's not just this like academic, oh, you're people of the book, so be an academic philosophically, sit in an ivory tower, study Torah day and night. That's lovely. But like, okay, so what? Just for academic, intelligent, wonderful exercise, a thinking exercise. There's so much more here. And we know that in the daily Shema, the Shema say morning and night, we know that we talk about Torah, we talk about learning Torah, we talk about our obligation to educate our children. So Torah is such a fundamental piece of who we are, and we sandwich our day with it, and it's something that's supposed to flow through our lives in a real, practical, and concrete way. Now, how do we do this? And what's so important about it? So first of all, obviously, we want to know who we are and where we come from. And Torah does not just mean history book, because it's not a history book. If you look, the chronology is off sometimes. It starts with a story, goes to a different narrative, jumps back to another one. It would definitely at times look like there's an editorial something or the other going on, and there are some dates missing and names missing, and it starts in this parsha, but ends in that parsha. What is going on, right? And so we know it's not just, okay, a story. Torah is a teacher. It's a guide, like a mora, a teacher and guide, a living, vibrant teacher and guide for you and I day to day. And it's one of those things that I tell our students, when you have a moral dilemma, when you have a struggle, when you're unsure which direction I go, the Torah has an answer for you. How to get there? Okay, now we got to start digging. Now the word comes in, but the Torah has clarity and an answer for you. And as Jews, the Torah has been our guide and our teacher for thousands of years. It's a gift. There's another beautiful explanation that the word Torah also comes from the same etymological root as ora, or meaning light. Torah brings light to our lives. So what is this light in my life, and how do I access it? And do I just go to a bookshelf? And I see Hindalea has a beautiful backdrop with tons of beautiful Torah books. Where would I even begin? And what is Manya? You're saying Torah, is that just the scroll sitting in front of the synagogue, right? That's Torah. Wait, but all those books are Torah. So what is it? How do we access this? How do we navigate this? Because it can seem super overwhelming. So first of all, let's understand that there is the scroll that Moses got on Sinai, the Torah, the explanations, the 40 days and 40 nights that Moses was on Sinai, all the Torah with all explanations. Because as we said in the past, if you open the Torah and you try to read a passage that discusses, let's say, a mezuzah, it says put it as a sign on your door, but like what, when, where, how? It would not be very good delegatable instructions. Certainly not one that we can have a scribe sitting in 2020 writing, a mezuzah, right? So how did that, information get from Sinai to 2020? And that's obviously through the oral Torah and the written Torah that were, taught hand in hand. Kind of the written Torah in code and the oral Torah with all explanations and translations. And then as the generations evolved and as our life got more complicated as Jewish people, and we got a little more dispersed and we got, a little bit more, not sitting in the land of Israel where we can have teacher to student teaching, right? That was obviously ideal because when you're learning, even if we're learning through Zoom, if I was bored with this subject, you would know in 5 seconds because you're seeing my body language. You're seeing that we have an energy. I always tell people when I'm doing a Zoom class, I just had one on Saturday night for a bunch of high schoolers, and I get on and there's only 2 girls with their faces on. I'm like, really, guys? Great. Okay, so let's try this. Let me teach a Torah class like that. Yeah, how's that going for you? Well, no, not really. So of course they all put on their screens because I said, guys, I'm not talking little black boxes, right? We're meant to learn this way, a dynamic process, back and forth, discussions up and down. As a matter of fact, one of the things I do for my students is years ago, I had visited a incredible Bet Midrash, a study hall in the center of Jerusalem, in Yerushalayim. And I took a video from a very high up, there's this great synagogue, and I took a video of the Bet Midrash in action. Students had no clue I was up there videoing, and it's literally 2 minutes, but you see people moving, talking, walk, and I say, okay, guys, here's describe the study hall on campus. And they describe everyone sitting with their headphones, with their own book, quiet, library. And then I say, okay, now let me show you a Jewish study hall. And they say, that's a study hall. What's going on? They're moving, they're running up and down. And it looks like aerobics. I said, yeah, Judaism, Torah learning is meant to be a dynamic, involved process where we are fully engaged, mind, body, soul in it. We're not meant to just sit there as academics absorbing information for the sake of information. So now that oral Torah transmitted teacher to student, as I mentioned, we were starting to get spread out, and they started to document. Comes the Mishnah, comes the 63 tractates of the Talmud, which are extensive work that deals with all aspects of life, divorce, work, all huge ideas, right? Took about 400 years to document this Talmud. And then as life evolves, now we have to learn how to apply those laws to different circumstances. So when we have, let's say, a discussion here, and we're not sure of the conclusion, or I'm not sure, I should say, of the conclusion, I'm like, I'm not sure. That's where I would turn to someone who's an expert in that area of Jewish law, who spent years studying these laws, or is, just like you'd go to one doctor for one major and one doctor for a different, aspect. You're not going to go to a cardiologist because your foot is hurting you, or you shouldn't. If your foot's hurting you, please go to a podiatrist, right? So therefore, even within rabbinics, there are many different rabbis who are experts in different aspects of law. Like a lawyer, you're not going to go to, an attorney for, business issues for your life insurance policy. You're going to go to different people for different things. And so what's fascinating, though, is that when we say Torah, we use that term very, very broadly. But there's the written Torah and there's the oral Torah. Then the oral Torah is documented, but then there's more, as we say. But wait, there's more. So the Torah, though, is called Tanakh, which stands for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. And that literally is the 5 books of Moses, which is the classic Torah. And fascinatingly enough, every single Torah scroll in every single synagogue, no matter what label denomination, in every single synagogue across the world, for every single generation, is exactly as the first scribe Moses wrote it. Every letter, every dot, exactly the same. Written with integrity, with holiness, with humility, with awe, because it's not just a book, it's not just a story. So we have the 5 books, which is called the Chumash, also referred to as the Torah scroll, from creation till when Moses is passing away. And then we have the next part of is called Nach, which is Nevi'im and Ketuvim. So Nevi'im are the books of the prophets from Joshua, took over after Moses, all the way through the prophecies of destruction of the temple. And then Ketuvim are things that were written along the way, such as the Megillah of Ruth, the Megillah of Esther, the Megillah of Ruth, the Megillah of Esther, that's books of Psalms. But every single one of those are considered holy and canonized as a part of the Torah. So now, Manya, you just started off by telling us we got to learn Torah all day and night. And now you just told me Torah is way more than that 5 books that I ever heard of, just talking about, Joseph and the Technicolor sweater and all the stories. Now, where do I go, Manya? Now, great. Now, I hope everyone feels overwhelmed. Do you feel overwhelmed? I'm overwhelmed now. So no, we're not going to be overwhelmed. We're gonna figure out how to make this real and practical, because again, we said Monday's got to be practical. It's got to be real. And so how do we navigate this? And what's our role as women in this? It's a really good question. We're pulled in so many directions. How do we get there? So first of all, we got to also really understand from a very deep place that once something is canonized and part of Torah, there's an authenticity and a holiness to it. So yes, a book of Joshua, a Navi, or Megillah, if it falls on the ground, we're going to treat it the same way a Torah scroll that falls. Well, God forbid a Torah scroll should never fall. I'm not going to actually say that there are different laws when it comes to that. But if a Navi falls on the floor, it's still holy. It has God's name in it. We're absolutely cautious and careful and treat it with respect. We are not going to just leave it sitting on a chair or, wherever. We're going to take care of it with respect. And obviously, it's a little different than a Torah written on scroll and even a Megillah written on parchment, but they all have a level of depth and a level of holiness. Now, what is it on a deeper Kabbalistic level, understanding, on a more mystical level, understanding what's so significant and important about Torah learning? So aside from it being a teacher and aside from it being a guide, which of course we all need guidance in life, right? Like we all need to figure out this thing called life and we need the best way to navigate it, because if we didn't, self-help books and podcasts wouldn't exist, right? But we as Jews have the best. We got Torah, we got the original, as a student said to me, I was on a panel and a student said, like, how do you feel? I said, we have the OG, we have the original God. We got this. We have all the information we need. We don't need updated versions of, different stuff. We have Torah. It's authentic, it's true, it hasn't changed, its values are consistent, it's taken us through generation. And even more so, Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism explains that Torah is chachmato u'ritzono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does that mean? That means God's will and God's wisdom. What God wants out of us, what's God's wisdom for us, is the Torah. So when you're saying, like, God, what do you want out of me? The Torah. The Torah is God's way of connecting us finite humans with this infinite neshama, with this infinite soul within, with this infinite godly divine spark that we have within, that needs to be sustained and nourished. And God said Torah is the how. Torah is that connection that gives these finite humans with an infinite godly soul direction. My husband often was talking to a student, and a student was saying, yeah, but I don't need Torah to tell me, like I can figure it out myself. So my husband said, okay, the student was very into photography. So he said, okay, you got this new fancy camera, right? Yeah, I got a new fancy camera. So I said, how do you know how to use it? He says, oh, I watch tutorials on YouTube. It comes with a guide if I'm never sure how to use it. So my husband said, what do you need the camera and the guide for? Like, someone's going to tell you how to use your camera. It's your camera. So my husband said, darling, he said, why? Why do they know? He says, well, they made the camera, they know. My husband said, darling, God made you. You have a part of God within you. And God is telling you the best instructions, the best guidance, his will and wisdom for you is Torah, is in the Torah. And its wisdom has helped for thousands of years, sustained us. And when the world is in turmoil, when the world's moral compass is lost or confused, we always have our Torah, a constant in the chaos, a constant in the whatever value system is the world is struggling with. So it's a gift we have. And it's something that not just do we have the literal do's and don't do's, eat this, don't eat this, give this much tzedakah, don't give that much tzedakah. This is how to keep Shabbat, this is not. We also have the soul of it. And that's through the lens of Torah, of Chassidut, of Kabbalah. We have so much wisdom, the mysticism that peels away the layers, and not just what to do and what not to do, but the soul of it. And so these are the gifts that we have. This is the things that we can unpack. These are the things that we can bring into our lives so that when we are confronted or conflicted or unsure, or even when we're not, we just want to live the life of a strong, proud Jew. We just want to transmit Judaism to the next generation with passion, with invigoration, with a sense of Jewish pride. We turn to our Torah. It has been at our side for generations. It's ours. It's our personal inheritance. Now, what's absolutely fascinating is that as the women's lib movement and feminist movement was rising to the surface, there was obviously a lot of questions about Judaism's perspective on femininity and women and learning and all of this. As a matter of fact, when we first moved here, the single question I got the most the entire year that we were here was, "You're the Chabad Rebbetzin?" You're not at all what I was expecting. And I would just look at them with a big smile and I'd say, "Well, what were you expecting?" And I'm not sure what shtetl-esque view they had, but I certainly wasn't only clad in brown and black. Nothing against brown or black. I just happen to like a little more color in my life. And I think that they were not expecting someone who had so much passion for living a proud, strong Jewish life. I don't know. I think they expected me barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. I think that's what they expected. Okay, listen, I happened to be in the kitchen and I happened to have a pregnancy while I was here. But I avoided the barefoot and pregnant thing and in the kitchen thing. We just didn't do it all together. But point being that I think that what shocked them most was that, and as a matter of fact, in the beginning, when we first got here, I remember the local temple wanted a class on Hasidim, like they have landed in our city and we have one of them. So let's have a class. And I remember their first gut reaction was, "Let's ask the rabbi." And at that point, my husband taught it. But the funny thing is now, if they said, "Let's ask," I think they would know to come and sit and learn together. And for the past over 10 years, we have a women's Torah and tea learning together, women learning Torah together. So what shifted from this notion of this oppressed shtetl-esque woman to, I know about 5,000 Chabad Rebbetzins around the world who are passionate about Torah, learning Torah, teaching Torah. I have 44 of you on here tonight learning Torah in 2020, women from around the country. So how's that shift happen? And where's that misconception come from? What's incredible. You have to go back a little bit, but in 1939, the previous Chabad Rebbe was asked by someone who was a little intimidated that his future daughter-in-law wanted to learn Kabbalah and mysticism. And the previous Rebbe, wrote a very long, extensive response, basically saying that not only is she permitted to learn, she needs to learn, and not just learn, but gather another group of women, get them together, create a sisterhood of young women who are learning. And in 1930s, there was a sisterhood in Riga, Latvia, of women, young Hasidic women who gathered together to learn the deepest, most mystical dynamics of Judaism, of life. Before we were sure of women voting, this is what the women, Hasidic women, were learning together, these deep ideas. Powerful. And if you fast forward throughout the Rebbe's leadership, Rabbi Schneerson, Menachem Mendel Schneerson's leadership, there's so many different campaigns and initiatives that the Rebbe rolled out. And so many of them were centered around who? The women. The laws of mikvah, reinvigorating them, teaching them, exposing them. The laws of Shabbat, lighting candles, sharing candle lighting. Go out there, make sure the homes are full of warmth and light. Kosher, again and again. Education, Jewish education. Jewish illiteracy is at the 80% mark. 80% of American young Jews in college campuses are Jewishly illiterate. And if I tell you illiteracy is on the rise, you're going to tell me maybe inner city, whatever, this, I don't want to pinpoint any states. There are a lot of people from different places. You would not say middle of America, middle-class American Jews. So we got to do something. And that was the Rebbe's vision. That's what the Rebbe saw. And who did the Rebbe want to take that charge, that lead? He didn't send a bunch of rabbis out there. He said, I want couples, husbands and wives, teams, shluchim and shluchot to go out and teach and inspire and uplift the Jewish people. From the youngest child in preschool singing the Aleph Bet is precious, or tucking your baby to bed at night singing them Jewish lullabies, to sitting and discussing deep mystical ideas, all part of the continuity of the Jewish people. There was once an artist in 1969. Her husband was a professor/rabbi at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. And her husband had started this new Talmud class on Shabbat. And they went into the Rebbe, and so she kind of tagged along. They're going into the Rebbe for a meeting one-on-one, maybe, some blessings. So she tagged along quietly. She thought there's a rabbi. Her husband's a rabbi. They'll talk. And she says that her husband was describing this Talmud class. And the Rebbe looked at her and said, and what are the women doing their time? 1969, ladies. And she said, oh, we're preparing wonderful dishes for the kiddush. We're schmoozing, we're kibitzing, whatever. And the Rebbe looked at her and said, and why don't you teach a Mishnah class? And sure enough, she told her husband, I can't do that. And her husband said, don't worry, I'll work with you. She said, for 25 years, she ended up teaching. And she said, more than I taught, I learned. I developed a deeper relationship with my Torah. And I got to connect other women with their Torah. So yes, it's wonderful to be in the kitchen. I'm a fan of nurturing and feeding, and we talked about it in the kosher class, right? We talked about it in the brachot class. I'm a big fan of accessing souls through the stomach. Big fan. But we got to remember the mind, and we got to remember the neshama, the soul. And when people talk to me about self-care and people talk to me about me time, I said, there's self-care for my body. I got to exercise. I got to, be careful with what I eat and maybe try to get some more sleep, right? And there's self-care for my mind, what I'm putting in, but there's self-care for my soul. And for me, the best vitamin boost I can get is Torah learning. So more than I get from learning, I love to teach because I selfishly get to learn. And you know what? My life pulls me in so many different directions. So I'm going to be honest, this past 8 weeks was really selfish. Every morning when the kids went off to learn, I would sit and prepare and learn. What a dream. I got to prepare and learn and dig deep into big ideas. So first of all, thank you, ladies. But here's the ultimate self-care, connecting our soul to its identity, to our inheritance, to the ultimate soul food, and to understanding our relationship with Torah is not just a superficial one, or not something that just belongs to scholars, males, rabbis, sitting in a Talmudic seminary somewhere. As a matter of fact, the Rebbe addressed extensively the obligation of women to learn and be knowledgeable in all the areas of Torah that are related to our lives, whether it's mikvah, Shabbat, so many different areas, and not just, know just the Jewish law of how to do it, but to know deeply how to live that and transmit it and share it with the next generation. So ladies, you're doing the first thing. You're here. And for what I understand, there is more Torah learning. I got a message already from someone telling me that they're already enjoying so much the Wednesday night davening class on prayer and tefillah. And so every single one of us who's been carving out this sacred time for this most incredible gift are not just investing in ourselves. See, Beis Chana is incredible because it's not just investing in us, but each one of us has so many different people we meet, we're connected to, we're involved in. Other Jewish women, young or old, that we know that we haven't had a chance to say, hey, get on board, come join the sisterhood of the women who are strengthening ourselves and our homes through learning Torah. And you look at the vast array of classes that Beis Chana offers, from prayer and personal connection to mysticism to parenting to getting over your frustrations and fears. And I think that was a class, right? From fear, frustration. I don't know. I missed the title, but it did catch my eye. Not that I'm ever frustrated, but I caught my eye. If I was, I would show up. But the point being that it really, the full spectrum of the human experience that we have as women, Torah has for us, and how fortunate we are to be living at a time where we're able to use all that feminine energy to connect, to bond, to learn, to grow. And remember, it's a process, not a product. I just got a message just this Shabbat from a father of a student who had visited a few weeks ago, and his son had grown so much in his Jewish journey. And this father had a lot of guilt that he didn't give his child strong Jewish experiences. And he said, my son had to struggle so much to find it. And the father said, and I'm 60 and I'm just scratching the surface. I'm just learning what it means to connect on an inner level to my soul. And I shared with him the story of Rabbi Akiva, who at 40 years old did not know the letter Aleph. And yet what happened? Strength, determination, perseverance, dedication, hard work, and a lot of support from a wonderful wife. He goes on to be the largest scholar, not large, a very large scholar, a very great leader whose words we echo daily. We had a whole class on it. Loving your fellow like you love yourself. After l'recha kamocha. And this is from someone who did not know what the letter Aleph was at the age of 40. So if you're around 40, you're older, but you know what the letter Aleph is, you're doing really, really well. You're here, you're learning, you're connecting, you're on the road. And remember, it's a beautiful process. It's not just, I noticed the way students study in university, there's a course, they have to take it, they upload it, they delete it, they download it, they take the test, and there, boom, upload, download, delete. That's not it. See, every moment we're learning Torah is precious. It's connecting us. It's a mitzvah. We're involved in the mitzvah. Right now, for 42 minutes, we're involved in a mitzvah. In the infinite, connecting with God, what he wants from us. How special and how precious. So I want to thank you, each and every one of you, who've given me the opportunity to learn together with you. And the ultimate Monday self-care. Maybe we'll change it next time to self-care Mondays. I was going to think manicures are coming to the table, but we'll explain very quickly. Maybe we'll start with this class. And l'chaim, ladies, to continue learning and growing. And as long as we're alive, we have the opportunity to learn and grow. If we're here, in one of the talks the Rebbe was giving to women before Shavuot, the Rebbe, very unique. The Rebbe would gather, he would empty the synagogue from all the men, all right, out, bring all the women in a few times a year and address them before Shoshana, before Shavuot, and talk to the heart and soul of the Jewish woman. Because the Rebbe understood that these are the next generation. This is mothers and sisters and these, come on, ladies, we all know every Jewish holiday, the Jewish people are in crisis. We step up, we save the day, whether it's Hanukkah, whether it's Pesach. This is kind of our story for many, many years, right? We've been doing this for years. So the Rebbe got that in a very deep way. And the Rebbe reminded us that our souls are wholly powerful. And we're going to bring this generation to the era of Mashiach. And the Rebbe, in one of these addresses, right before Shavuot, the Rebbe was addressing how the Torah's special relationship with women. And the Rebbe was saying something so powerful. From a young girl to a girl, if she's going to, God willing, have a 120-year life, even at 119, to continue learning and growing. If we're alive, we have the opportunity to learn. We have the opportunity to connect. We have the opportunity to grow. And since God is, Torah is God's will and wisdom, and it's infinite, we continue learning and growing together. Because every single one of these mitzvot, we scratch the surface. Just a little bit, just a little taste of what this mitzvah is about. So ladies, thank you, l'chaim. I hope that you can continue to learn and grow as we enter Hanukkah, where it's all about chinuch and education and learning. I always say, let us know strong Jewish women, let us be strong Jewish women, let us raise strong Jewish women. So l'chaim, thank you for allowing me to join you on this beautiful journey. Thank you, Hindalei, as well, for allowing all of us to continue learning and growing together, Hindalei.